morning, everybody. I understand that this is being cast and maybe some folks in Europe and maybe even out there in Australia. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dallas. And it is so nice to be together again. I'd like to start by having a moment of silence for the 600,000 in the U.S. who have passed and the millions around the world, whether they're family members, co-workers, just fellow human beings. May we all be together someday in the future in His presence. Amen. Okay. I'd like to bring your attention back to the last Aero engines in Fort Lauderdale 2 years ago. The last time we were together, the aviation industry was booming. There was growth forecast for several years into the future. 3.8, 4.2% compounded annual growth rates were forecast. We were looking at Asia and other emerging areas entering into the world's population's middle class. The overriding theme of that conference was that demand exceeded capacity in the MRO space. Conversations were optimistic, even giddy. We were living in what would be known as the good old days. It can't get any better than that. On the very same day, February 4th, the ship Princess Diana in Japan pulled into port and went into quarantine for a month. 712 out of 3,700 passengers and crew were infected, and 14 eventually died. In the United States, just a couple of weeks later, February 29th, a nursing home in Washington had alerted the Centers for Disease Control that 27 out of 108 residents, 25 out of 180 staff had come down with COVID-like symptoms. Authorities reported that some of them had cases of pneumonia. Mike and I, just a couple of weeks later, were on spring break in Hawaii. And every day around noon in Hawaii, which was 5 Eastern Standard Time, I'd go back to the room to watch the news conferences. On March 11th, Donald Trump suspended flights from Europe to the US. It was then, clearly then, that I knew we were going to be in for a very, very long, tough road. There were those on both sides of the Atlantic who were trying to get home. It was a scene reminiscent of passengers the day after 9/11. Y'all should know better than ever give me a mic. Okay. As you can see from the TSA data, that even before the administration's cancellation of intercontinental travel, already there was a skittishness of the public to do things behaviors they thought were risky, including flying. Trump's March 11th announcement triggered an outright complete collapse of travel. Within days, aircraft operated by all the majors worldwide began to park for what was hopefully only going to be a short period of time. Here you can see assets of Lufthansa, Ryanair, Cathay, and others in Asia and Europe at major airport hubs grounded. The unthinkable unfolded across the United States as all the majors removed 60 to 70% of their fleet from revenue passenger service. Major ferrying operations began to move billions and billions of dollars of aircraft to remote desert locations for what was known inside airline headquarters to be a long, long time with no knowledge or know-how of how this would be unwound. A company like ours, or all the folks here, there's no playbook for this. Instantly, we had to become financial crisis managers, health risk mitigation officers, and in the end, it seemed like everybody was an epidemiologist. We held meetings with employees weekly and sometimes twice a week about safety, about wearing masks, about cleaning. On Sunday evening, March 22nd, Dallas County health commissioners issued a statement to stay at home. And I'm sure wherever you folks are at, similar things played out. The term essential worker was first broadcast, and quickly we put together guidelines and issued our employees travel documents so that they could get in and continue to work, components that needed to be returned to the hubs and also to the MROs for what turned out to be a freighter uplift that was needed for air bridges across into Asia and wherever the supplies were needed. We got calls from multiple employees that Sunday night. Are we closed? And we had to roll that out. No, we're not closed, we're essential. The other side of the equation came into play very quickly. We had grave financial concerns. Are we going to get paid? Our greatest concern turned to counterparty risks. Who did we extend credit to? We simply did not know if any of our customers were overexposed themselves. I recall Warren Buffett a long time ago saying, when the tide goes out, you find out who's not wearing a bathing suit. We were very, very fortunate. While payments may have come slow, we had very, very little exposure to folks that couldn't pay up in the long run. And in fact, we have great relationships with all of these customers continuing today. As a parallel to the 2008 financial crisis, I will give the federal government very, very high marks. They recognize the potential for a complete financial systemic collapse with grave potential for permanent damage. The administration and Congress worked out at lightning speed to get liquidity into the market, particularly for the industries that were economically impacted. The PPP loan, I'm sure everybody recalls, when it first opened on March 27th, there was a complete mad rush, and it was so difficult to work through either banks or lending institutions with all the forms that need to be filled out. In our case, the window closed, the first $250 billion, they were out of money within 3 to 4 days. And while we weren't desperate, we knew that it would be very, very helpful. With the first tranche of funds exhausted on April 3rd, within a week, the Fed quickly replenished the PPP loan with a second tranche. And on April 9th, the window reopened and a much more orderly process unfolded. Turning to the human factor side of the equation, we had 140 employees at this time. Going into the year, October, November, December, we had added 40 folks for training. There was, again, the capacity issue. We were training folks into the first quarter. Literally, we had to scale that back very, very quickly. On the COVID side, we had 25 cases inside our company, all of them with contact tracing from outside the company. We had 0 cases of intra-company COVID. You'll see later, there's a small video, we literally issued gas masks to folks, which we required them to work with. We had 41 negative cases, and as you can see, unfortunately, we did have 3 hospitalizations and 1 fatality. What we noticed early on was that there was an extremely high correlation between TSA passenger data and component repair input into our shop. And you can see the bottom there. Slowly, ever so slowly, we started to see a trend line that was slightly upward. And as you can see on the far right-hand side of the chart, we're extremely optimistic with the divergence between component repair inputs and another leg up in passenger traffic. We're hoping that this will point towards the true final recovery. This is a finance slide that shows our company's revenue going back 7 years, and we could go back 3 more years. We were doubling about every year to every 18 months as we added new product, as we added new operations, the component repair. Then we got our CAC. Then we added our engine hospital shop. We were literally on a 50% trajectory, and we hit what I call the COVID cliff. The COVID cliff gave birth to what I'll also call the COVID canyon. And I'm sure everybody here can relate to what went on from June until, let's say, January, February of this year. I'm going to focus in, this was a revenue chart. I'm now going to focus on a cash chart. And this is a horror show. The point at the peak is the COVID cliff. What I'd call everybody's attention to, going into the year, we were doing a lot of work scopes that included a lot of inventory. Boeing, wherever you are out here, thank you. We had limited credit with Boeing, so we're buying engine mounts and doing QECs and just loading them up. At the point where COVID struck, our receivables to payables was at the highest ratio ever. From that peak down to the deepest valley and back up, that is an $8 million whipsaw. I'll also point out, as the cash collection cycle went, the revolver bottoms out at 0 and stays there for a while. I have a couple of arrows here in the deep valley called funding losses. That's an accounting term, Harvard MBA accounting term, funding losses. It means losing money. Anybody else out there do any of that losing money? Remember Chris Farley, when that movie, and the deer, Tommy Boy, and the deer kicks the hell out of the car and windows and pops out the convertible? Hey, that funding losses thing, that was freaking awesome. No. In the depth of it all, Larry Kudlow in the Great Recession kept saying, I see green shoots. Our overall business in Q3 and Q4 started to see life, particularly in the engine hospital shop business. The grounding of these aircraft assets drove a wave of activity of lease returns, which required inspections, preservation, storage, and then those assets also had return contract compliance matters. So there was a new swing in work that was moving towards that business. Continuing the thing, asset managers started looking at how to rationalize their assets. The lessors and operators were looking for ways to return their assets to service. Our engine service business was now 3 years old, and we had in place capabilities to do fairly complex work scopes that fit the exact need of the customer. LPT NGV replacements, HPT nozzle blades replacement, HPT shroud grinding. And all those repairs are done in-house at the engine shop and then the component repair shop complementing that activity. This was like, I'm sure everybody feels the same. This was like watching paint dry. I just can't wait till business comes back. It was like marching in place forever, the long walk in the desert. What did we do right? Going back and recalling that slide, the cash slide, we knew we had to get to sometime into the second or third quarter of 2021. That cash had to last that long. Whatever you did in June, July, August last year would have an impact on how much cash you had. Did you make it to the finish line? There'd be no falling short. Well, we did a lot of things right. We had an investment plan going into 2021, which called for a multiple of new product capabilities and new processes. And as you can see on this chart, which is a little bit of an eye chart, we bought a high-speed grinder opportunistically from, thank you, KLM. We added bridge cranes. We added some balancing equipment. We added module stands, tensile testers. All of those things give us greater tools today to meet the needs of our customer. And the boldest thing of all, in September, we committed to open a new facility, our fourth facility. I look back and think that was pretty damn courageous. We made an announcement about this facility. Our engine disassembly will move over there and co-locate with the largest customers we work with. And then on the east side of the airport, our engine hospital shop will now expand and take 100,000 square feet so it can offer greater services to its customer base. Lastly, but certainly not least, we took opportunity of that time to get our systems better. We became ISO 9000 qualified in our engine hospital shop and AS 9110 in our component repair shop. It was a long effort led by our quality director and vice president, Kristen Orlando. Today, we are better all around for having spent this year getting our systems improved. Now, what I'd like to do, in June, you'll see there's some folks here that are all dressed up in gas masks. In June, we put together a little video for a marketing tool to let everybody know, hey, we're still here. It was also a morale thing for the employees. Let's take a look. like to close by taking a chance to introduce a couple of folks on the team. This is truly a team sport. This is a team industry. We are an incredible fraternity and sorority that keeps the world's lift going every day. I'd like to introduce the best power plant engineer in the world and also a managing partner at the engine service shop, Kevin Hughes. Please stand. Our Vice President of Marketing, a gentleman that I met on the streets of Zhuhai 20 years ago. We were part of the first graduating classes with the CAC authorization. Jack Lane. The best damn quality director in the entire world. My daughter, Vice President of Quality and Managing Partner, Kristen Orlando. And I think everybody knows our Vice President, our Chief Operating Officer, Vice President, BP Aerospace, President of Engine Services, my son, Mike Walsh. I am truly one lucky guy. I get to go to work every day in a job I love with folks I love. Thank you all. God bless you. God bless this great country.